Welcome back, boys. Today we're checking out the system.
Not our biggest enemy anymore. They want us to believe it's about the bankers. The goal is a slow overthrow. They want to get us to a civil war.
This financial industrial complex is building financial weapons of mass destruction to centralize as much Bitcoin as possible. Once someone goes into a Bitcoin ETF, they're never coming back. Trump is delivering crypto capital, centralization of as much Bitcoin as possible, and getting ready for false flag operations. The biggest enemy that we have is this culture of celebrity and idol worship.
Some of our friends, Simon, that sit at the table with us, they're the bad actors. We now have let the enemies into the gate. They're coming for our privacy because they know that's the best way to enucleate Bitcoin. And that's what the Samurai case really is all about. That should have scared the shit out of everybody.
By popular demand, in this explosive episode, Dr. Jack Kruse and Simon Dixon, two brilliant minds, rip apart the global pyramid of power, revealing who truly sits at the top, how we got trapped here, and the terrifying road ahead. They hammer home why your privacy is under siege right now and expose how corrupt elites are weaponizing the Samurai case to crush resistance. Want to fight back? Links to sign the pardon petition are in the description down below. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining me today. I want to dive right into it. This is very exciting for me. You got a meeting of two incredible minds here, and I think there's a lot of signals going to come out of this. So just to kick things off here, Simon, you've warned that BlackRock has become the CEO of the Proof of Weapons Network, a stateless mafia more powerful than any president, army, or law. It's the bankers and the debt merchants who can crash nations, start wars, and now own a substantial amount of Bitcoin through ETFs and other products. And Dr. Kruse, well, I believe you share that sentiment and your concerns about the financial cartel. I would suspect that you put the real threat maybe isn't necessarily in the boardroom, but perhaps it's more like the DARPA, Zionists, the transhumanists trying to hijack our minds and turn us into compliant slaves, even if we hold our own keys. So, Simon, just starting with you, who is the actual threat to Bitcoiners and our freedom? Ultimately, who are we up against here? And is Bitcoin held in self-custody, used as money, sufficient to break free?
Yeah, well, that is the battle. So I've been involved in Bitcoin since 2011, and the latest round of Bitcoin attacks, because it's been attacked ever since I first got involved, is certainly from what I call the financial industrial complex, of which I see BlackRock as the most important node in that network. That can change, but it's a complex of venture capital, private equity, investment banks, commercial banks, and then the asset managers have kind of found themselves.
Yeah, this is some complex stuff we need to learn. Like, kind of figuring out it is like the entire kind of system and all the people behind it. It's like they're a shadow, they're like a monster. You can think about it. They're like a massive shadow, and all these terms and all these things, it's a little bit of light, or it is the light. You shine it on the monster and you're starting to see everything that is happening, everything that is, So this is very important. This is why I've been checking this out recently. It's kind of been, I've just kind of stumbled onto it, just searching for the truth. And this is some crazy stuff happening.
On top of the chain in the latest iteration of financialization, securitization, and now tokenization. BlackRock, I classify as the CEO. This financial industrial complex is building financial weapons of mass destruction to centralize as much Bitcoin as possible. One of those nodes is the ETFs, because once someone goes into a Bitcoin ETF, they're never coming back. You're not going to sell your ETF, have a tax hit, then try and figure out how to get it out of BlackRock into a bank, then into an exchange, then into purchasing Bitcoin. That whole iteration will get your bank account shut down in the process. The other is Bitcoin treasury companies. And this is, raising finance from the financial terrorists in order to purchase Bitcoin. So you can put it in a Wall Street wrapper and then structure debt instruments around it and perpetual, obligations of fiat currency, so that then they can use that in order to manipulate the short-term price of Bitcoin. The other is obviously leverage. You've got the derivatives complex that is being built around Bitcoin. And then you've got other nodes where companies like Strike are now offering Bitcoin-backed loans. And so therefore you can get margin called into giving up your Bitcoin. And when you combine all these together with stable coins, which are essentially investing in Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining using the government's yield, you've created an entire complex. And all you need now is to add banks that can create paper Bitcoin. And the battle is centralized Bitcoin within the financial industrial complex versus self-custody. And we need to win that battle. And we need a certain amount of the network to prop up self-custody running nodes in order to win that battle, because they want to centralize as much Bitcoin as possible.
Beautiful. Dr. Kruse, your thoughts?
I think he described 99% of the pyramid. The 1% he missed, which is the top where the gold leaf is the control aspect. It's where the transhumanist comes in. And if you understand, like the things that I've talked to Breedlove about, things I talked to you about last time, is that you don't need to control assets to control people. That's what Meyer Lansky did back in the day. That's exactly what Roy Cohn did in the in-between frame between Meyer Lansky and Epstein. And now the layers that you have the Google layer. Clearly, Simon and I are aligned on the Saylor ETF Think layer, but I think the more important part that I think maybe Simon is missing, and I wouldn't say missing, I just don't think he appreciates it. The most important part of the control aspect is what Trump told us in Nashville. You're going to have your Bitcoin, you're going to do everything you want with it, but we're still going to be able to control it, and they're going to use computer interfaces. That's where
Yeah, I don't know much about like Bitcoin and stuff because I'm poor. Like, let's just be real. I don't know much about like business and all that. I know a little bit, like, you know, like customer side. Like, I've seen dumb business owners be idiots to customers, but I don't know like the business. I don't know Bitcoin. I know that I should get it and keep it in self custody, like safe, like keep it safe, not have it on some exchange or anything like that. I understand that. I'm probably going to start doing that. I just don't know, like, where was I going with this? I forget.
AI stuff comes in. So let me give you.
Oh, right. The thing is, they're going to have like a massive surveillance state with like AI and everything, and every transaction is going to be, or this is what they want. They want every transaction to be viewed, stored, and maybe dumped in some AI, and the AI is going to calculate, like, do you need to pay tax on that? Like, is there a penalty? Is this illegal? And this is the thing, they're gonna make like having business without the bureaucracy or the government involved, they're gonna have that to become illegal. That's basically what I see in the future. Now, this is not something they have said, but I just thought about it. It's going to be like this, where you need to pay existence tax, you know, 5% of the Bitcoin, give it to the state, like just for existing, just for doing a transaction, just for existing on this planet, you're gonna have to pay taxes between a purchase. You know, you buy some apples from your local apple dude, you pay with Bitcoin in the future, you're gonna have to pay taxes on that shit. That's at least what I think.
The evolution, so we're all on the same page. Lansky famously, like if you read anything about him as the accountant for Murder Inc., said that I don't need to control assets, I need to control people. that was probably best shown in what happened with Groves, what happened with the Rothschilds in 1969. And then I think probably the best analogy is what he did with J. Edgar Hoover. Okay. Where did the next iteration come from? Roy Cohn. Most people may not know this. I put a tweet out this morning about it. And I don't know if Simon knows it because it's more US centric, but Roy Cohn was a Russian Zionist immigrant who became very famous because he was Trump's fixer before all the other lawyers were the fixer. And he used Joe McCarthy as part of the Top Gun, I would say, defense. Let's bring them closer so that we can infiltrate the U.S. Army. And this goes into the part of the story where DARPA fits in and everything else. The other thing is we need to also enucleate the power of the U.S. military for wrench attacks so that they'll do the bidding of the Zionists in Israel. So what did he do? Roy Cohn took a playbook out of Lansky. This is the evolution until Epstein. And he basically saw to it that they would use the idea of getting communism in by fighting communism. So he was the lawyer for Joe McCarthy, for McCarthyism in the United States. And what did he do? He set up a PSYOPs. And so we're clear. I know we talked about the last time you and I talked. What's a PSYOPs? PSYOPs is the hook, but they only show you the bait. So what was the bait? The bait was what everybody in the United States and Britain and the Western powers saw, that the United States was going against communism in the 50s and 60s. But that's not really what Roy Cohn was doing. Roy Cohn was the perfect PSYOP because he helped put 2 Jewish people to death, the spies from World War II, the atomic spies, the Rosenbergs, and many Jews in New York, many Jews in the United States, many Jews in Tel Aviv thought that he was a traitor. That's exactly what the Zionists wanted people to think. And what did Roy Cohn do? He worked with McCarthy. He set McCarthy up. If you know anything about the 190 hours they were on TV together, 80 million people in the United States, just so you know, that's half of the United States in the 1950s, watched this unfold. And basically, the undertone of the whole thing is Cohn was a known sexual deviant, and the guy that they put him on TV with.
Dude, I don't know any of this. Like, this is very interesting. This is very interesting to hear about.
And the guy that they put him on TV with, they sold through Time Magazine and the New York Times as also a deviant. And what was the whole point? Because I know a lot of people don't know the context of this. This guy, Chilled, who was a really good-looking dude that looked like a Greek god, got an appointment with the U.S. military in 1953 because he was one of McCarthy's friends. Roy Cohn set this whole thing up to make McCarthy look like a useful idiot. What was the real issue? McCarthy was correct that the Bolshevik communists were infiltrating the United States at this time. But Cohn wanted to make sure that he disgraced McCarthy. And he did that because what did he do with Chilled? He knew that in 1950s America, the only thing people hated more than Bolshevik communism was gay people. So he used himself as the target, and he allowed the process to unfold on TV. What do you need to know about this? What does Simon need to know about this? This is a classic Fabian maneuver, with Simon being tied to the Commonwealth. He understands what and who a Fabian is. They're trying to get incremental change. What was the change that he was trying to do? He was trying to get communism fully infiltrated all the way through. But what was the big thing? He really wanted to get the U.S. Army infiltrated with beta, females and males. And what the goal was...
Dude, this is... the thing is... everything is now kind of communist. Like these... like Marxist ideas in college and in the people in general, they're very it's very sad to see, you know, how people are tricked. And yeah, what he said, women in the military, was that what he said? Yeah, who thought of that? That's some evil thing to think about. Like, what kind of weak soy, like limp-wristed man thought of that to get women into the military like that? Like, that's such a bad idea. I've said it before. Like, what do you think is gonna happen when a woman gets captured, you know, by the enemy? Like, you know, you need somebody to have your back. A woman fucking abandons you, sells you out, and starts sucking dick. Like, whoops. Like, this is the thing. Like, women are not meant for war. And it's evil to like put them in war like that.
We really wanted to get the U.S. Army infiltrated with beta females and males, and what the
Beta.
goal was
Yeah.
Was to change that. So if you know what's happened in the United States from 1950 to current day, you'll see what happened with Trump, with General Milley, when Milley said, yeah, I'd rather protect and connect the CCP to break ranks. That, you know, to a 1950s American was kind of crazy talk. Today, everybody's okay with it. And you have to know how that process started. And just so we're all clear, none of this happened with money, Simon. Not one damn thing. Everything happened with Bernays propaganda. Everything happened with Zionist media relations. Specifically, it was Time Magazine and the New York Times that they used to do this. And this is the most amazing part of the story, at least for me, for Bitcoiners to understand. McCarthy was destroyed by this because Cohn also controlled J. Edgar Hoover. And it turned out McCarthy didn't know that. And he gave a picture of these two guys, Chilled and Cohn together. And the lawyer for the U.S. military, specifically the Army, his name, a guy named Joe Welsh, said to Cohn on cross-examination something about the pixie. And that's when McCarthy spoke up and said, well, what's a pixie? I don't understand. And he goes, well, it's another name for a fairy. What happened right there? That was when all the politicians, right and left, realized the homosexual undertone, and they came after McCarthy. They didn't go after Cohn. And the interesting part of the issue was, if you look at all the numbers after that, everything crashed and cratered. The whole story about communism was over, completely over, which is what the Zionist goal was. And then what happens after that? Cohn takes the bullet, but when you look at history now, because, you know, Cohn is dead now, Cohn became a fixer later for Trump, which I think everybody knows. But what do you need to know, Simon, so that you can put the top of the pyramid where it belongs? Nothing happened to Cohn. Like, McCarthyism got taken out. What was the effect of this psyops? Is to basically make the U.S. military an asset that could not take Israel out. And they were very effective doing that without seed phrases, without money. And then what happened eventually from 1953 on? We sent each Israeli citizen $10 million a day from the United States. So what does a Fabian do? They rob from one to give to another. And when you see how this happened, the point that I need to make to a guy like you is, I know what you know. I'm already way past the Bitcoin phase, and I think you need to get past it too, because I don't think you really understand that the guy who's the next iteration after Epstein, he's the most important one. That's the guys running Google. Because what did they do? They took Lansky and Cohn's idea and said, hey, can we remove the people from this and do this through search? And when I see your phone next to me, Simon, if we ever meet, you'll notice that our feeds are quite different about the same Twitter topic. I told Nathan the last time we talked, if he was there from Canada, what he would see is different. So our reality is driving our perception. And the thing is, that came directly out of the same time frame. That's 1950s MK Ultra. This was all going on at the same time. So now you have these new guys. Who are the new guys that are the real bad actors? I've heard you say many times that it's Fink, Sailor, and I agree, but they're the level below. The guys on the top level, that's the Palantir cats, especially Carp, especially Peter Thiel. In fact, some of our friends, Simon, that sit at the table with us, they're the bad actors. We now have let the enemies into the gate. And the point that I tried to make to Nathan and his buddy last time is that when you let those actors in and they're able to use the things they use, they don't need your seed phrases. That's the reason why Scott Bessent famously said, we'll just take their Bitcoin, because they don't need any of that. If you don't believe me, I'll give you a perfect example. That just happened. All of us saw it unfold. Two guys last night released something about Samurai Wallet. That should have fucking scared the shit out of everybody. Why? Because we have a constitution. We know that that was not a money transmitting business, but what did the Southern District of New York do? They said, we don't give two fucks. Do you know why? Because it started with Roy Cohn. Roy Cohn is the one that changed all that, made it acceptable for us to put people in jail. Now, back in Europe, people are being thrown in jail for tweets. So the point I'm trying to make to you is this poor guy's going to jail for 5 years. We know the charges are bullshit. In fact, I will tell you, I have a Bitcoin developer that's sitting right next to me who I made listen to this because I knew we were going to talk about this today. And he's madder than hell. He's more mad about this than we were about Ross. But do you want to know what Ross was? Ross is another psyops that Trump gave us. That's all it is. And
I don't know what that is, brother. This is like I'm missing so many details, man. But this is very interesting to listen to, you know.
Bottom line is, as I told Nathan, what's the real plan that I think we all need to go? Because Simon, Nathan, me, everybody, Marty Bent, we're all on the same team. But I don't think we're all thinking about this the right way. I think the psyops we have to be worried about now is they're both sides, left and right. Doesn't matter who you want to put as your evil empire. They're coming for our privacy because they know that's the best way to enucleate Bitcoin. And that's what the Samurai case really is all about. Because what did they have to do? They had to take his server to knock it down. CoinJoins is going to be the next thing they go after, because that's effectively, doesn't matter what your seed phrase is, doesn't matter how much Bitcoin you got. The bottom line is, if they can turn every locale into a place where they can turn it into the Southern District of New York, we're all fucked. And that's the real game that we should be talking about. I think the Sailor BlackRock thing, I think all of us know, I think Max Kaiser's done a phenomenal job at warning all of us that to make a market in Bitcoin for a nation state, you know, like Samson and Jan 3 guys are talking about, you have to have about 1.5 million Bitcoin to do that. Well, that's where the treasury companies and Sailor comes in. So basically, they're the useful idiots for the nation state players that we're talking about. And the key is, in the grand scale of things, I don't think Fink and Sailor really play a huge role here when you understand it's really about how we think. Can we maintain Bitcoiners as first principle thinkers to understand how we need to do things? Because the bottom line, even if they take everything away that they're attempting to take away, because that's what I think the Samurai case really shows us, that we're still going to have peer-to-peer access. They're not going to be able to turn the fucking internet off. That I can tell you, because they need it actually more than we do. And I think when you begin to understand that, the case that I'm trying to make, Simon, is that we have to be wiser than everybody else. And I said to Nathan, and I don't know how he felt about it because we haven't talked about it, but I think everybody who's a Bitcoiner needs to get Sun Tzu's book and really look at it. Because let me tell you something. What Roy Cohn did in the 1950s to the people in the United States was absolutely fucking brilliant. And just so you're clear, so you know the history, the guy that Roy Cohn set up this psyops with, do you know what he became famous for after it was all over? He made a movie called The French Connection. That was his payoff for being part of the psyops. The Top Gun story that you just heard. Remember how it comes when he said to the guy, I want to bring you closer. Do you know who just bought TikTok, right? Ellison. His son this morning just did a hostile takeover. Do you know who's the guy that spoke out about Paramount buying Netflix?
No.
David Ellison, his son. So now, guess what? Tom Kruse, who talks shit about this, now he is in the crosshairs. So what am I trying to say to you? History has a really interesting way of repeating. It never repeats exactly, but what you're seeing going on right now with Ellison is exactly what Roy Cohn did to McCarthy and what Roy Cohn eventually did for Trump. And you have to realize, if you go back, I grew up in New York City while Trump was ascending, through the Kushner empire, the Adelson empire, and the Silverstein empire. Why was he given the access that he was given? Because he also is a useful idiot. And remember, he's the useful idiot that we all kissed ass. I mean, Nathan heard me say probably some things that a lot of Bitcoiners were pissed off at me about when I talked about David Bailey. Look, David Bailey's a good guy, but David Bailey got fucking fooled. And it's about time that we sit down and do podcasts like this. And sometimes we have to call out our own. You've had your own issues. You got fooled by Mashinsky. So let's all be up and up about this. You're still my brother. Nathan's still my brother. We're in this together. If we want to win, we got to understand that the people that we're fighting, they're fucking ruthless and they will stop at no end. And if you think it's just about the money, then you don't really understand what the capabilities of wireless technology, screen technology, and brain interfaces are. Then you'll understand really what CARP, really what Elon Musk, really what Neuralink, what SpaceX and all that's about. They really believe they can control people, and it doesn't matter about the money anymore. It's no longer the Rothschilds mindset that if you give me the money supply, I can control everybody. Technocracy now believes that they're more powerful than the money changers. So the bankers are likely not our biggest enemy anymore, Simon. But I got news for you. The reason I tell you this story and the reason I tell this to Nathan, I want you to remind yourself about Roy Cohn. They want us to believe it's about the bankers. And I'm telling you, as an old man, that I lived through many, many different psyopses. And I'll explain to you why humans are fallible for psyopses. You probably know in my day job, I'm a brain surgeon, so I know a lot about how the brain works. We're very subject to the Dunning-Kruger effect. The only way to go against the Dunning-Kruger effect is become a first principles thinker. So the case that I'm laying out to Bitcoiners, I think the reason why I'm acerbic and why people get pissed off at me is because I lay this stuff out. But I want to lay this out so that we all understand before I shut up. I want you to think about a chef and a cook, okay? First principle thinking is a chef will go and buy all the best ingredients he possibly can. He will come up with a meal that is absolutely outstanding and unique. A cook is a person that will go to the store, follow a recipe in a book. They'll make you a meal, but there'll be nothing spectacular about it. Okay? That's how most people learn through analogy. First principle thinking goes, no, I'd rather have something that's unique. I think there's one thing that we can all agree on. What we're facing right now in the financial world is the most unique problem that the world has ever faced. So that means we need a lot of chefs and not a lot of cooks. And the only way you do that is through the first principle thinking. And the people who are first principle thinkers in Bitcoin, we need to elevate them. We don't need to put the retards on podcast and have them tell us the same bullshit over and over again. And I think that's part of the reason why I am a pain in the ass for a lot of people, but also because people understand that I do have a mastery of the history. I do have a mastery of how the technocracy has gone above the money issue. And when you understand that,
Yeah, I mean, I think in society in general, we need less. Just think about it. We need less, psychologists, psychiatrics, or like psychologists, therapists. That's what I'm talking about. We need more philosophers, anthropologists, historians, these people to kind of educate the people instead of emotions and how do you even say it, like carnal desires. Like, people have no control over themselves, and they don't hold themselves to a standard. They don't have ideas like honor, or respect, even um politeness. Politeness is one of the, like, that is going out the window. People are just being impolite everywhere. They're giving no face. It is important to give face. It is important to be polite. But we live in such a weird era. And yeah, it's what he's saying. It seems like these people that have the technology, they think that they can be God. They can go in your brain and control you. Yeah, from what he said, from what I remember, they can like, what did they want to do? Scan and take your codes, take your Bitcoin, steal, rob you, control you like a slave. You don't even need money anymore. You'll own nothing and be happy. What does that mean? Like, truly, what does that mean? It means they'll take everything from you, and they'll engineer you if they have to, biologically or whatever, with AI, whatever, to make you happy and have nothing. It's really sick, But this is some like high level, stuff. Like, I'm thinking about like things that aren't there yet. And I hope it doesn't happen, but it seems like it will. Yeah. So we'll see. We'll look at the future.
has gone up. I do have a mastery of how the technocracy has gone above the money issue. And when you understand that, then the way in which we think about the things that are unfolding, say right now with treasury companies and with Michael Saylor, takes on a totally different nuance. And I will tell everybody who listens to this, when they speak, listen to them. Alex Karp is not lying to you. Sergey Brin is not lying to you. Ellison is not lying to you. They have set up an unbelievable control grid that will completely control just about everything about us. And that includes our money and our seed phrases. And I will remind you, this is probably the last thing I'll say before I'm quiet. I want to remind you specifically, Simon, the samurai guy's going to jail and they never got his seed phrases, but he's still going to jail.
Simon.
Yeah. Okay. So a lot to unpack there. Yeah, absolutely. There is, the next wave of power is certainly coming from the technical industrial complex. And you quite rightly pointed out the key players there. I think the samurai, I was just on a call with the samurai guys, like seeing what we can do for support. Because, they confiscated the servers with the X-pubs. This is certainly a case that is being put forward in order to chill people into using these coin joins and various other innovation that is important as an essential defense there. I think it's really interesting, the Trump case, because it pulls together a couple of attack vectors. I've quite often said the biggest enemy that we have from Bitcoiners and podcasters right now is this culture of celebrity and idol worship. People seem to think that Michael Saylor is the Messiah, or Trump is the Messiah, or Bukele is the Messiah, or any of these people are coming along. And if you look at what Trump's done, is firstly, he created with the executive order the environment for mass confiscation of Bitcoin to build up the Bitcoin strategic reserve. And I know that because I was one of the victims alongside a bunch of other people in the Bitfinex exchange hack, which I believe was a Zionist operation in order to steal 119,000 Bitcoins. And what did we launch from that? A security token. And that was the world's first security token that was launched on top of Bitcoin. And obviously they bought from Brock Pierce, Tether. And Brock Pierce, part of the Bitcoin Foundation, that then goes back into the Epstein networks when they try to infiltrate the core developers. And so we're all going, interestingly, full circle. And so what did Trump say? He said, we want all Bitcoin to be made in America. That means centralization of as much Bitcoin. We used to debate around the power of China in the ecosystem through Bitmain, Jihan, the different miners, the mining pools. Obviously, there was the operation that then put 40% of the hash power centralized into Texas. And now there's all these public companies that are emerging. There's all these different parts of the ecosystem. So now we have a problem with as many Bitcoin being made in America. What else did he do? Well, in the Genius Act, there was language and clarity around targeting coin joins and targeting unique wallets through hardware wallets to anonymize every transaction as a unique transaction. He also put language which came from the finance and bank lobby that gave the banks the ability to use the funds held at the Federal Reserve to back a stable coin. And you have to have a banking license in order to pay yield on that stable coin. And then he launched his own stable coin and then started working with the Tether community, which is essentially taking the yield on the government debt to build out the largest private Bitcoin mining operation, as well as having these more centralized public miners as well. So we got that legislation, and all of that was around this Stargate project, the Larry Ellisons, and you look at the next generation of tech bros emerging. You had Steve Witkoff, who was connected to funding for urban movers for the 9/11 operation and the Mossad operation. His son is now being put in charge, of and working with Trump through World Liberty Financial. You also had, Howard Nick. His son takes over Cantor Fitzgerald. Cantor Fitzgerald is the investment bank that's building all these treasury companies, holding the bonds and the reserves for these stable coins, and encouraging people to borrow against their Bitcoin. Now, obviously, we know Howard Lutnick was the neighbor of Jeffrey Epstein, deeply connected. Cantor Fitzgerald was the company on the top of the towers. He was away that day, the Silverstein connections, all those different things of anyone that's actually looked into this. So he's also saying, let's make America, the crypto capital of the world. Crypto capital is integration into artificial intelligence, programmable money, and the social credit score that Elon is building, as well as the artificial intelligence that Peter Thiel is building. And who did he put in charge? He put David Carr. So now you've got the complete PayPal tech bros that are building this AI and crypto strategy, while simultaneously having, as you quite rightly point out, these lower level nodes in the network try and centralize as much Bitcoin. Now, why I think the Trump connection is really interesting is because of the Charles Kushner connection. And so anyone, sure anyone that you said you were around in New York, well, Charles Kushner was the one that weaponized these sex blackmail operations and married into the Trump family his daughter to Jared Kushner. Now, Jared Kushner currently right now is the one behind Affinity Partners, which is the fund which is funded by the Gulf countries, the $2 billion fund at the moment, which is launching, and Affinity Partners is the one that is facilitating much of this investment in order to put the Middle East into the next wave, because they're looking at building out data centers within the Middle East as well. And so if you look at some of the sovereign wealth funds, like the Abu Dhabi Sovereign Wealth Fund, the UAE Sovereign Wealth Fund, David Bailey invited me to speak at Bitcoin Mena right now, which I politely declined and sent them a video instead, because we're seeing as well a lot of these pardon operations. You talked about Ross Albright, absolutely, a honeypot operation. But also what we're seeing with the World Liberty Financial and Binance as well. So Binance, if you look at it, it was alleged that it was doing money laundering for Hamas. They had suddenly came up with these Signal screenshots. Binance was taken out, and what was part of the Department of Justice settlement, they have to install a compliance division. This gave of the US government. This gave them access to 280 million Bitcoin users. What was the first thing that they did with that? Sorry, crypto users. What was the first thing they did with that? Well, they actually started to shut down the accounts of Palestinians, Lebanese, Turkish, all around. And they put together a request where Mossad and the Israeli government managed to get all of the accounts shut down and freeze all of those monies, while simultaneously running a starvation campaign and a genocide. What technology was used for that genocide? Well, it was Palantir that did genocide as a service in Gaza, occupation as a service in the West Bank, drone integration in Ukraine, crowd control in Saudi Arabia for the annual Hajj pilgrimage, integration into the UK government for the pre-crime agenda, and also scraping social media data in order to arrest people based upon what they think they're going to do based upon their social media profiles, open border, closed border operations within the European Union. And you can take your pick and go further and further. So this whole psyop of open borders in order to radicalize the Americans into pushing forward these ICE surveillance state at the moment. And what did they do? They integrated it with the private prison section in El Salvador, which is also a Palantir operation as well. So you've got Palantir that is managing the open border, closed borders in America. You've got the surveillance state, you've got the digital IDs, you've got the pre-crime agendas. You've got Doge, which was essentially Elon Musk pretending he could pay off the national debt when obviously you can't, because the dollar's a Ponzi scheme. And what did he do? Integrated that data of all the American government data into some of these social credit scores and artificial intelligence networks. So you can see that Trump is delivering crypto capital, centralization of as much Bitcoin as possible, and getting ready for false flag operations in order to radicalize people into opting into this covert stablecoin central bank digital currency in America, as well as what's happening in Europe, where the digital euro is essentially becoming a CBDC. So I absolutely agree that this technology is being built together. And what I find interesting with the Jared Kushner, Charles Kushner, is the operation that happened throughout Bitcoin's history in order to try and infiltrate the core developers through some of these blackmail operations. And I know firsthand, because I was around seeing some of the people and the different types of compromises that was happening there. So I'll pause there and we can go through some of the Epstein operations and these connections.
Attention all freedom-loving Alberta Bitcoiners. Tired of the big just for the O Valley and hashes no or your BitQ
which is an owned steady million.
Yes.
Block X started hassle-free today. All right, let's jump back into the episode.
Yes,
yeah,
Jack.
I would say, to that point, I think we have to take a step back in history because Simon laid a lot out. What happened with the Genius Act? If I cut through the chase, the way I see it, this is exactly what happened when the first charter bank, the Bank of England, was made, in the Netherlands. What was the goal there? everybody knew that they were going to drive debt up and they were just going to pay, people a yield for perpetuity as an annuity. If you take away all the fancy terms, the modern terms we have because of the financialization that happened from that time, from 1666 onwards, understand that the key mechanism of the bank charter, the Bank of England, was basically to make a debt-based system. That's exactly what the Genius Act does for crypto and Bitcoin. And when you understand that the people that set the system up will be able to get, an annuity paid to them. What we're seeing is that because the fiat system is being imploded and a new one's being placed, they want to make sure that they still get the VIG on top that they got when they established the Bank of England. And I think most people who are Bitcoiners understand how the Bank of England went through all the centralized monarchies. It wound up in the United States. The same people that set up the Federal Reserve, what did they do? They psyopsed Woodrow Wilson. So Woodrow Wilson and Donald Trump have a lot in common. And I've been telling people to go back and look at what happened with Woodrow Wilson before the Federal Reserve Act. You'll notice that even some of the same policies were in place, like tariffs and things like that. You'll be stunned about the immigration policy as well. You'll see many, many things, but Americans are not really good at knowing their history. Why? Because remember who controls education in the United States? The government. They only teach you what they want you to know, and they really want you to be.
Oh man, history. Let me guess. I mean, here in Norway, the history for your entire school, like until you graduate, is pretty much all about World War II. That's about it, and the Nazis and the Holocaust and all of that.
An obedient.
That's basically it. We didn't learn much about. We didn't learn about Rome, about Byzantine. We didn't learn about Middle Ages, Dark Ages, Mesopotamia. Nothing. British Empire. I can't remember.
Teach you what they want you to know, and they really want you to be an obedient idiot. That's really the whole goal of the centralized system in every facet. So it does take the first principle thinker to go back and put this together. And like I've been in rooms and in spaces where, I heard Simon arguing with, some pretty famous Bitcoin lawyers, Zach Shapiro, to be quite frank. And one of the things that I think people need to understand, that some of the people that are in our family still can be our problem. And that's why I mentioned to you, Nathan, that we just had Thanksgiving here in the United States. And, you can hate your Uncle Joe, if he just doesn't see the whole picture. And I think the thing that I like about doing this little conversation between all of us, this is really beneficial for the audience because they get to think about all the pieces that they know, but they're also getting to hear about the pieces they don't know. And the pieces they don't know begins to explain some of the geopolitics that are around. For example, what's the main goal that Simon brought up about the open border policy? It's not a psyops. It's actually, this one is more direct. To have a one world government.
I thought about it before learning about much of this like Bitcoin stuff. I thought about it. It's really, it's a surveillance state. Like I thought about it. Like they create problems and they solve the problems by saying, "Hey, we're gonna have an AI robot take care of you in your home, always watching, always listening, to keep you safe." And the thing is, I can't even imagine the kind of dystopia that could come. Like, you live in these pods, for 7K. What was it, like a Tesla pod or whatever it was? Like these like little houses that, I mean, they're like smart houses. They're probably gonna market them as that. And they can straight up just lock you in your home like it's a prison, like you're living in a home, but it's really a prison until they choose it to be. So basically, like, this is crazy. Like, if you live in one of these, like, I guess smart homes, you do anything wrong, they're just gonna lock you in your home. Boom. And you're quarantined, and internet shut off. You can't communicate with nobody. You can't do nothing, and it's gonna be cooked. I gotta tell you. This is why people are thinking like, "Hey, I'm gonna move to Montana. I'm gonna move to the woods. I'm gonna get away." These people, they want to do that, but I don't know if it will work.
Government, that Simon brought up about the open border policy. It's not a psyops. It's actually, this one is more direct. To have a one world government, you can't have militaries going in and destroying people. So what do? You take people with brown skin and put them in white countries that use fiat money and let them do the destruction. What's the key? The key is what Bukele told people at the CPAC thing. Make sure you don't fix the judges. Make sure you don't fix the AG. Well, Trump didn't do that. So what's the rhetoric? The rhetoric is, I'm going to fix and I'm going to do MAGA, but he's not really fixing it. He's got Kristi Noem on there with her pretty face. It's got ICE people running around, and you think that they're fixing all the shit that Clinton, Obama, and Biden did. That's total horseshit. The goal is a slow overthrow. What's the real key, Simon, that I would put out to you? What's going on in the United States? I think it's even more simple to understand. The real big problem that I see for the United States is Amendment 1, 2, and 4. 4 is a real pain in the ass for the people in the government. So what would they really like to do? They would like to divide us along lines of left and right, between Clinton, Obama, Biden, and Trump. I think you can see that those lines develop. They want to get us to a civil war, because if you're a Brit or part of the Commonwealth, what do you know about the Magna Carta and civil wars? Like, the British already had their civil war when they killed Charles I and they had Oliver Cromwell in there. What happens? You write new charters. Guess what the one world government really wants to happen in the United States? They want us to go to a civil war, so we'll write new foundational documents. You want to know the truth? American patriots.
Bro, imagine if instead of like this dystopia where, we're gonna be super slaves by AI and, Peter Thiel and all this. Imagine if we had like proper, real philosophers, historians, write up something that will be incredible against in line with natural law, and people will like truly understand human nature. Just imagine, like, we could straight up live in a normal society. None of this bullshit, no gay stuff for the children, no trans stuff for the children, no weird stuff. It could be so nice. But, I hope things get better, but they're gonna get worse. But after that, I hope things get really good, and for a very, very long time. I hope so, because it's gonna bring me happiness. That's really it. It's gonna make me happy. That's why I care about this stuff. I want to live in a world where people are happy and they can have something. They can have a family. They can own something. They can have a part in this world. It's kind of like you're born with nothing. And, what you're really supposed to do in a way, think like primitive. You're supposed to, get some logs together, build a simple shelter. Okay, then start to build like a cool house. You get a woman, you start farming, boom, you got some food, or hunt or whatever. Boom, you get some food, boom, you get a woman, some children, and you're happy. You're content with life. That would be nice. But now, basically, you're going to be, if this dystopia happens, you're going to be born into a prison where you're not allowed to even rub two sticks together because that's illegal. like, don't people see what is happening? Like, I guess people don't, because all these distractions everywhere. And I think this is pretty sad. I want the most joy for the world, and everything I'm seeing, all these distractions with the feminism, with the women, with the migrants, with the you name it, man. Video games, pornography. Like, brother, like, I'm tired. Like, I am tired. Like, this is some crazy stuff, but it's important to talk about,
It's at United States. They want us to go to a civil war, so we'll write new foundational documents. You want to know the truth? American patriots that own Bitcoin, we don't want that to happen. We have to get rid of the occupiers. Who are the occupiers? This story goes all the way back to the Roman Emperor Augustus. They're the proletariat. They're the guys that have the knife in the back of the people that we see on our TVs. Those are the people behind Macron. Those are the people behind Trump. Those are the people that are behind Obama. We see Obama going to London right now. The London power base is where all this begins. And for all the venom that people have, and they talk about the Jews versus the Zionists, I will remind you, Simon, of this key historical point, because I think we need to fasten it down. The people who are the original proletariat for the real banking cartel, the Templars, they were based on the land that Israel's based on right now. Don't forget that. This story is as old as human history. Okay? They are running the biggest game you can imagine. And Fabianism is not something that a lot of Americans understand, but it's exactly what's happening to us. It started really with the Federal Reserve Act. And that, from that time forward, the real goal of the Fabians that were locked inside the United States was to import more communists, more Fabians into the government. They are now everywhere. They're in all three branches. But you know what the real message for Americans is? The real message, how do we take the transhumanist agenda apart? Realize that our system here of governance is good. I will tell you, Simon, if we get really smart about this, we can actually use the Top Gun strategy on them, because they're centralizing Bitcoin in America. When America stands up to the occupiers, guess what happens? They're the ones that get Top Gunned. So the case that I made to Nathan the last time I was here, this may sound dire to a lot of Bitcoiners. I actually think it's pretty good. And the reason why I'm pretty optimistic is because we are going to be a powerful force in the future. Your children, Nathan's children, my children. What we have to do a better job at, Simon, instead of arguing with Zach or arguing with American Hodl or arguing with British or arguing with Ben or whoever, we need to listen to each other carefully using first principle thinking. And then we need to come up with a coordinated plan. Why? Because now we're the farmers in the United States with pitchforks. We know how good they are, but they don't know how good we are. And I think when you understand the game that's being played, it doesn't emulate what's happened in the past, but it sure rhymes. And I see a lot of the same parts there. The control vectors that they have aren't as good as you think. And there's ways to take them apart. There's ways for you to become a better first principle thinker with your own brain, because the difference between Alex Karp and Palantir's system is that its neural network is not like mine and yours. This one is the most amazing one. Why? Because it learns from new information. Their system only learns from the shit they've put into it. And therein lies a big weakness. And that's not the weakness that most Bitcoiners are focused on. They're focused on number go up and going to these conferences where basically they're putting Carp and Palantir's targets right on our faces. We can't keep playing into their scheme anymore. And I think when people understand this, you'll begin to understand what happens. We just had, two big Bitcoiners, killed in Europe who were from Russia. Why? Because they weren't supposed to be there. I told Nathan the last time, just like my developer friend that's here, about the story of the Chinese hackers with ETH. Remember when all that crazy thing showed up? I talked about it on another podcast and people thought I was crazy, that they were able to use a computer interface for this guy to spend 1.65 million ETH over time and then even put crazy messages in the blockchain about this. Why did I bring that up to you? Simon, I'm bringing it up to you because that's exactly what the future is going to be. They're going to let you keep your ETH and your Bitcoin. What they're doing now is compliance tests to make sure that they can use technology to make sure that you still do what they want you to do. That's the point. That's the real point here. You're not playing by rules that we think. The Rothschild and Rockefeller rules, dude, they're very dated. And they know that. They were told that by Meyer Lansky in 1969. They now have all opted to go all in on the technocracy space. So what do we have to do as orange people? We have to understand the limitations of what they've decided to YOLO in on. And I can tell you that there's ways around this. And we need to organize and we need to do podcasts talking about stuff like this.
Simon, I want to get your response to all of that, but I also want to throw in there too. We mentioned a few times like corruption and manipulation and the occupiers as well too. I just want to ask, is there anybody from the Proof of Weapons network? Is there anybody that's currently an occupier that is in the Bitcoin space that isn't actually all that known? Or do we have a fox in the hen house anywhere, basically? And then your response to Uncle Jack as well.
From my side, anybody that's promoting, look, we got lots and lots of useful idiots because I don't think there's people that are able to put this stuff together. But at the same time, we've got people that are genuinely being pushed into, taking their Bitcoin, putting them in these Bitcoin treasury structures. We've got, look, anyone that comes from a cypherpunk movement, like Adam Back, that was mentioned in the white paper, that is promoting stable coins, Bitcoin treasury companies, and all sorts of shit in the code. Like, you got to ask yourself what happened to that person. And again, like, people go down this celebrity worship route of thinking I'm attacking this person that you love. That's not the point. Blackmail is blackmail. Like, payoff is payoff. Incentives are incentives. If someone's going to wipe out your family, you're going to look after your family. That's the reality of this. So Bitcoin was built on a don't trust, verify. And so really the canary in the coal mine is all these people that are looking to others and just going down this celebrity worship culture and not realizing that they're being incentivized, into these centralizing forces. I think that the whole, the competing implementations and the knots versus core debate is an important debate that people should be engaging with. We need enough people holding Bitcoin in self-custody and enough people running these nodes, because there is going to be a core network of people that are going to have to fight against these attack vectors. And as I said, one of the interesting things I think is, if you look at this whole concept of a one world government, well, clearly there is an operation to do what they did to the British Empire. The Bank of England bankrupted the UK government, and then they switched the world order over to the Federal Reserve. And then they installed the Soviet Union after the Bolshevik Revolution. They put the Federal Reserve in America. And then they also funded, the fascist side. And then obviously we won't talk about it because this is probably going on YouTube. But what happened in World War II was significantly different to what we were told. But they had those different ideologies, funding all three. What I think we're witnessing right now is the dismantling of the dollar, like we saw the dismantling of the pound. They're doing it on several attack vectors. Firstly, the
Bro, this is some crazy stuff, man. This, like, man. I I didn't think it was like this, you know. I looked into philosophy, I looked into history, you know. It's important to know everything, pretty much, to learn everything, to keep an open mind, and I've done that. And this is some crazy knowledge to know about.
the more you can weaken the dollar, which is what Trump is. Trump's an agent of chaos. You know, I'm sorry, the reality is that the dollar is a debt-based Ponzi scheme that requires a perpetual debt cycle, the IMF covert operations, in order to continually roll over that debt. And so when you take on, quote, the deep state, and you take out USAID, you're weakening the dollar because it is propped up by these covert operations in order to force people into dollar enslavement. But they're coming after, they're coming after three things. So they're breaking the petrodollar. The way they're doing that is by percent strategically weakening the dollar in a managed transition. And the countries in the world, the Hong Kongs, the Saudis, the various other Emiratis, when they peg their currency to the dollar, they're currently subsidizing the peg. So if you look at Saudi, they're selling their gold and selling their treasuries to maintain their peg. Now, the weaker the dollar gets, they're going to have to depeg at some stage. They're also, because of this shift in power, they want to plug all these AI data centers into the Middle East and harness all that energy. We're getting resolutions around, these investments and these colonial investments within the Middle East, and they're relocating some of the crypto bros over to UAE at the moment. They're also breaking the Japan carry trade. So by hiking those rates, we're getting the repatriation of those dollars that need to sell their treasuries in order to, sell to buy Japanese yen, and then they're getting yield on their Japanese yen. At the same time, we're saying this narrative, this false narrative via Zelensky, who's just an agent for the military-industrial complex, in order to make it look like America wants peace and Europe is pushing war at the moment. But clearly, that's to break the euro dollar. There's $1 trillion that they want to make from destabilizing Europe. Europe is, is fully subordinate to, people look at the power structure and the power dynamics. The way that I see it at the moment is you obviously have the Bank for International Settlements. The most important node in the BIS is the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is owned by the private banks. Those private banks are now public companies. Those public companies are owned by the asset managers. You have to have perpetual money printing of dollars. You have perpetual investment and inclusion in the index funds. And you have to have media manipulation in order to maintain those power structures. But at the top, BlackRock, the Federal Reserve is using BlackRock's Aladdin technology. And that's how BlackRock ended up with the ETFs department of Barclays during the global financial crisis to end up with all these board seats and voting seats. You got the Treasury that was using BlackRock's technology during COVID. So they've got both fiscal policy and monetary policy. They've also got all of the different money managers and fund managers that are using their technology. And so you've got peak centralization at the BlackRock level. Now, where it becomes interesting is this technical industrial complex. Many of those players are still subordinate to the capital flows they need. And they've obviously got to get continual Pentagon budgets, which is the big, beautiful bill. They've got to get continual capital flows, which is why you're seeing this AI bubble. Essentially, there's two K-shaped economies within America. You've got the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer, the debt slaves and those that own the assets. And then within the stock market, you've got the S&P, where stocks are doing dismal, but it's going up because all the money's going into the tech bros. And so you've got this K-shaped economy within the index as well. And, that requires this constant flow of Pentagon budget and capital flows that we're seeing at the moment. But by simultaneously breaking the dollar, you'll notice that the number one funder of US treasuries right now that's propping up this market is Cayman Islands. And Cayman Islands is just the hedge funds. It's not the economy. It's got UK and Japan is reducing. China's reducing. Everybody's selling. Saudi's having to break the peg. And so now you just got Cayman Island and stable coins, as well as the nodes they control, like the UK. And so by having this, escalation with Europe right now, which is going to be a war zone, no doubt about it. They just want to asset strip everything. And Zelensky's their man in order to try and repatriate some of this funding. They're also breaking the euro dollar. So they're breaking the euro dollar, they're breaking the petrodollar, they're breaking the Japan carry trade. What that means is a managed weakening of the dollar, just like we saw in the Bank of England, which drives these capital outflows out, while simultaneously, NVIDIA is building out all the data centers, Palantir is building out all the technology, and everybody's integrating into these stablecoin and crypto real-world asset rails, which essentially is, they also gave us freedom of speech, but not freedom of reach. What was that? That was essentially, we're not going to cancel you anymore because we want you talking. We want to know what you actually think. We don't want to cancel you because that's your social credit score. That's feeding the algorithm so that we can reward you with higher interest rates or lower interest rates based upon your language and what you're saying. And then you've got the AI integration, and that's all coming together into this technocratic Orwellian nightmare that's being built by, manipulation of Trump through these blackmail operations and rings. I mean, you don't really need to blackmail Trump. He's in it for the money anyway. But he's married in. If you look at who funded Trump and his campaign, his number one donor was Elon Musk. His second donor was the Bank of New York Mellon family. His third donor was Mariam Edelstein. And so you've got the Israel first, you've got the bank first, you've got the technical first, and the technical is kind of merging into the military industrial complex through these cybersecurity and artificial intelligence warfare. And so it is 100% managing that transition, and it's happening right in front of our eyes right now.
Dr. Kruse.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that, what Simon just hit on is actually the top 1% of the pyramid that I don't think Bitcoiners are making the calculation that we actually are helping do this. We're feeding the information in to the system. We need to stop doing the talking that we're doing, and we need to start being a lot more strategic about how things happen. Why? Because when you understand your enemy, you become the enemy. And we need to start feeding in this machine that they're building bad data. And that's really important. That's where counterintelligence really matters. And when you really, truly understand this, that's when podcasts get really interesting, okay? In other words, there's going to need to be, we have some very smart cryptographers that are not tied to the folks that we've brought up in this podcast. It's going to be very easy to reverse engineer an Enigma machine to take apart these transhumanists. They're smart, but I got news for you. There is a weakness to their game plan. And you need to understand what that weakness is. And unfortunately, I think the only people that are going to be capable of doing this are going to be Bitcoiners down the road. But I have to tell you that the Bitcoiners that we listen to, be careful who packs your parachute. I think that's really my message. And I think when you understand some of the history, like, for example, I agree 100% with Simon about Adam Back. I don't think if I was a meeting organizer, I would ever invite Adam Back to another meeting, if you want to know the truth, because I think it's obvious that he's cooked. Another guy that I know is cooked is Vitalik Buterin. I happen to know things about Vitalik.
We're learning who's cooked. dude has been on social media. It's always funny seeing like older people use almost like slang or brain rot terminology. Yeah.
Probably he's cooked. Another guy that I know is cooked
It's cooked.
is Vitalik Buterin. And I happen to know things about Vitalik that probably would make your guys' head spin. Why? Because some of the people that I got involved with in COVID, where we were able to out that the SV40 promoter was in some of the jabs, you may be shocked to find out that Vitalik Buterin's money is now funding their lab. So realize that the people and the web that's here is way deeper than you think. It's still, I'm not telling you this to scare you. I'm telling you this so that we're wiser about what we do. The future, in my view, is not survival of the fittest. It's survival of the wisest. And I have to tell you right now, Bitcoin, the core of Bitcoin, is focused on survival of the fittest. And if we continue to do that, we're going to turn into a sausage grinder. And we can't do that. And I think podcasts like this are designed to give you something to think about and talk about with your family over the holidays. And, you know, I don't think Simon or myself are trying to tell you that we have it all right. What we're trying to say is that we made a diagnosis and we're throwing that diagnosis out for you guys to kick it around and do what Bitcoiners do. Proof of work, due diligence. Tell me why Simon's a retard. Tell me why Uncle Jack's a retard. Because guess what? That's how we improve this AI right here. And that's how we're going to improve Nathan's children's AI. We're going to turn them into something smarter than anything that Peter Thiel or Karp can make, or smarter than Tether's plan with Lutnick and Bassett. Like, there are ways for us to react, but we have to be smarter about how to do it. And there are still oases out in the world that have not been touched by this yet. I can promise you, there are places that you need to be careful, you know, with, but you have to know who your enemy is. And unfortunately, I don't think Bitcoiners like to pat themselves on the back a little bit too much and say, look, we made the big move because we put our money in Bitcoin. Great, but that's not the be all end all. I think that was really the key point that I tried to make to you, Nathan, before. And it's kind of like the thing I think I needed to say to Simon, because I've heard Simon speak about many of these things before, especially to other Bitcoiners. And I think the reason that Simon's not landing his punch, especially with some of those Bitcoiners, is because that top 1% is the missing loop for the whole issue. And I think what's happened in the past with the Bank of England, with the Federal Reserve, is actually being built right now through all the laws that you saw come in through this administration. And I don't believe that Clinton, Obama, and Biden and Trump are much different. I think they're the same animal, but you get a different Twitter feed to think they're different. And I think you need to understand that the game is always about control, and it may not be about control of the money now. It may actually be about control of your behavior with the money, and that's all they really care about.
It's very interesting. I want to unpack a few things. And I do want to go to also Dr. Jack Kruse. I want to go to the oases and see about where in the world we should be setting up citadels. But before I get there, Simon, I want to get a little bit more clarity on what we're transitioning to, or what they're trying to transition to if they're breaking the dollar. If we went from kind of UK pound to then US dollar centric, where are they trying to move us to? And additionally, you mentioned the idea that we're going to see false flags. I was wondering, going forward, what kind of events or things could we see that would be evidence to support this thesis? Like if we see this pop up in a year or 6 months' time, that would suggest that, yes, they are continuing on this path. And the last thing I just want to tie in there, because you guys are covering so much, is like cryptography and gunpowder and even Bitcoin, currently my viewpoint is that AI is going to be used to control us and manipulate the way we think, the same way that our feed and our search feed does as well too. is it possible for us to basically open source these large language models, recapture AI, and actually use it as a tool for our freedom rather than centralized enslavement? A lot of stuff there.
I want to pull on this control thing because I've seen it firsthand. I was when I first got into Bitcoin, I wanted to support the ecosystem. Bitcoin was about $3 when it went up to about $300 and various other things. I started investing in all the companies because this was pre all of the venture capitalists coming along. You couldn't get VC funding. The first company I invested in was BitPay. Now, I later did like Coinbase and blockchain.info and Kraken and many others, about 100 of them in total. One by one, I saw them all get compromised. And by compromised, I mean the VCs come along, you have the Silicon Valley sausage factory, and then they financialize and securitize them into something where they're now subordinate to their shareholders. And once they're subordinate to their shareholders, they have fiduciary duties in order to fulfill whatever they can profit maximize within that. So you end up going down shitcoinery, you end up going down all sorts of stuff. But originally, when you wanted to fund a Bitcoin core developer, we had Gavin Andreessen and various other ones. They had QR codes, you would fund them. But that wasn't consistent enough. So BitPay, one of the companies I invested in, decided that they'd like to put some of their budget and a percentage of their revenue into funding Bitcoin core developers. Now, that was fine. That was all good. But then as a community, we were like, well, that's kind of centralized in a company. Now, they want to lower transaction fees. We had the birth of the block size debate, during this whole thing. And so then you started to find the VCs come along. Suddenly, Peter Thiel, Founders Fund, started investing in all these companies. Then, that was around about the 2012, 2013, 2014 era. Then what happened is the Bitcoin Foundation came along and said, well, why don't we, as many companies want to get together and they contribute to a foundation and all these different people can contribute to a foundation. And we had the Bitcoin Foundation. One by one, you saw every single member compromised or attacked. So what was the first one? You had Mark Capellis. Now, Mark Capellis, many people think of him as the guy that stole 800,000 Bitcoin and found 200,000 under a mattress through Mt. Gox. Well, actually, he bought that exchange. Who did he buy it from? He bought it from Jeb McCaleb. Jeb McCaleb was the one that created XRP and Stellar and these other shitcoins. And when he bought it, there were 80,000 Bitcoin missing from the exchange. He actually emailed Jeb McCaleb and said, what do I do about the 80,000 Bitcoin? He said, you better buy it. And the price went up like crazy, which meant the Mt. Gox was a Ponzi scheme. And then they started building bots, Willy bots, in order to manipulate the price so you could try and recover. But these are the types of tactics. And suddenly, what happened to Mt. Gox? It was taken out. He's in prison in Japan. We had Charlie Shrem. What was Charlie Shrem doing? Well, Charlie Shrem created a company called BitInstant. And he was creating a pipeline so that you could get money into Mt. Gox further, faster. And then he would issue you credit so that you could then start trading on Mt. Gox. Charlie Shrem had to plead guilty, just like the Market Samurai guys had to plead guilty. Why? Because the Winklevoss twins, ended up getting 5,000 Bitcoin. And then when they arrested him, they made sure that his money goes so he can't afford defense. And then you say, well, will you admit that your money went into Silk Road, the honeypot connected to Russ Albright? Russ Albright, the same guy that the Trump administration pardoned, that's making up part of the Bitcoin strategic reserves. What did they do with a bunch of those Bitcoins? They sold it to the Silicon Valley VCs, the Tim Drapers, the Peter Thiels. These are some of the early Bitcoin wallet addresses that you're seeing moved right now as they engage in some of these market manipulation activities. So you had Charlie Shrem taken out. You had Mark Capellis taken out. Who else was around? You had Gavin Andreessen. What did Gavin Andreessen do? Well, a guy called John Matonis, who was the chairman of the Bitcoin Foundation, he told us hey, I've got this surprise. I know who Satoshi Nakamoto is. And he went and publicly brought Dr. Craig Wright and told us that Dr. Craig Wright was Satoshi Nakamoto. And who said and who verified that it was Satoshi Nakamoto? Gavin Andresen. And so Gavin Andresen, the first Bitcoin developer that met with the CIA when Satoshi Nakamoto left the project, told us that I have cryptographically proven that he controls the Satoshi keys after John Matonis comes along and says it's Dr. Craig Wright. Now, one of the early Bitcoin investors was Roger Ver. Roger Ver was involved in the Bitcoin Foundation. He said, with Jihan Wu, who created Bitmain in China that had just received funding from Sequoia Capital, that here's another version of Bitcoin so that we can fork away from that. And that ended up being called Bitcoin ABC, that was rebranded as Bitcoin Cash. And who came along and said it was Satoshi Nakamoto, it was Roger Ver, it was Gavin Andresen. And so you had all of these attack vectors. Now, what happened at the end in order to completely dissolve the Bitcoin Foundation? Well, it was Brock Pierce. And so where did Brock Pierce come from? If you look up Brock Pierce, you'll see all sorts of connections. He was in the Hollywood industry. He was a child actor. We know what Hollywood is. We know the connections, how you make it in Hollywood. And then suddenly he had a Silicon Valley startup that looked like, in the dot-com boom and bust, like the Wolf of Wall Street in terms of exotic parties and allegations of underage women that said there was sexual abuse. That was settled in those accusations. Now, recently, in the Jeffrey Epstein email leaks, who was the only person that met with Jeffrey Epstein? It was Brock Pierce. And what happened after the Bitcoin Foundation dissolved? Well, they had to find a new funder. Who was the new funder? It was MIT. MIT had a division called DCI. MIT was funded by Jeffrey Epstein, and we had a bunch of Bitcoin core developers that started moving and engaging in the next phase of the debate that led to the hard forks and the various other infiltrations of trying to take down Bitcoin through Bitcoin Cash. And then you have Bitcoin SV, and you had all these things. Now, Adam Back also created Blockstream at the time. And what I'm saying is, think about how these different operations work. You fund both sides of a war. This is the classic story, right? Communism, capitalism, fascism, you fund it all. And you create, like Operation Gladio, if you've read Paul Williams' book, strategic tension and strategic in order to create these civil wars. And so all this to say, I lived through all of that. I sat down, I was at a conference that, David Bailey, who I met with in China for the first time, he asked me to, we went to a conference and meet Brock Pierce, and Brock Pierce sat down with me for 4 hours and tried to persuade me that Satoshi Nakamoto was Dr. Craig Wright. So all I'm saying is, all of this to say is, it's all about control. And that's what it was saying here. So you can't trust, we don't trust verify. And what is this? This is why we got to look at the node infrastructure, the development ecosystem, where is mining, who's mining, where are the Bitcoins being centralized? Fortunately, you talked about Vitalik. Vitalik was a psyop in order to try and fork this off into proof of stake, because once you control the stakes, you control the network. That's why BlackRock is approving the Bitcoin ETF and applying for staking. We remained as proof of work. We didn't turn out as into Bitcoin Cash. But all I'm saying is, we are always under a constant state of attack, where we need to remain the different parts of the ecosystem, where we're sufficiently asking the right questions, because just from the parts of the ecosystem, and I haven't been deeply involved in the whole Knox versus Core, but I can see a control and a PSYOP operation, and we need to be very, very vigilant and very, very aware of these manipulations that are happening all around, trying to get as much control as possible. So I end with a bit of your question. You were talking about where we go next. We're moving to multipolarity. The British Empire handed over to the American Empire. The American Empire's handing over to what? A multipolar world, which can have a global agenda, a global central bank, digital currency. But the reality is that Bitcoin is the resistance in multipolarity. While we're weakening the dollar, we need to make sure that we've got sufficient levels of hash rates. We've got about 21% in China, 40% in America. We got a small amount in Iran, about 11% in Russia. We got to maintain that this is, as these different players are getting involved, that we're always spreading out the network. Unfortunately, I believe Bitcoin in a multipolar world is going to make sure that we push out some of the parts of that ecosystem globally, and we need to support other parts of that that ecosystem as well.
Dr. Kruse, I want to get your response, but I just want to add quickly too, your point about civil war in the US in order to undermine the Constitution, wouldn't it also make sense then to try and fabricate a civil war in Bitcoin to try and undermine it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, once you understand what game's going on here, that it's the one world government, the antidote to that.
So I don't know, like, oh man, I think maybe there's so few people that have all of this knowledge that they have. Me, I see it as kind of, it's such like scummy, like weak man woman tactics they're trying to do on you. They're basically trying to give you like a cortisol spike in a way. They're trying to give you a cortisol spike, and we just gotta have to be like, the thing is, they're gonna be like, look, all this division, all this politics, do a civil war. Everybody fight. Don't talk, fight. This is what they want. And every, normal, I hope everybody becomes like a normal, common sensed human person, man. I think we need more men in all of this. We need the men in, because this is important. We need to round up all the men and make sure nothing happens. Everybody stay calm. It's like this is like the woman screaming for nothing. Panic. Nothing is happening. Like the situation is under control. And yeah, it's really about, lower your cortisol. Like these people try to make problems out of nothing. They're like women. They're using woman tactics. And that woman shenanigans stuff, it's getting, is getting like bang, 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 bang. I keep training. And this kind of like woman tactics don't work on me. They used to, I have gotten my cortisol spiked sometimes by women, but I was younger and I learned every single time. Like you almost gotta be, I don't know what's the correct thing. There isn't like a word for it. I can't think of. You have to be like this type of person that just learns from everything. Even failure, victory, pre-failure. I don't know. I'm just saying stuff, but you know what I mean. You gotta be, before any action you must think. Don't the feelings. That is the fallibility. Is that the correct one? Like, you're fallible when you feel things. When you're a human, you make mistakes, so you gotta relax. Chill. That's kind of what I think about. So yeah, I hope you guys get the message.
That whole game. Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, once you understand what game's going on here, that it's the one world government, the antidote to that whole thing is Bitcoin. You also have to realize that the node issue, I think is a really interesting debate that people need to start thinking about, and how we do things and where we go. Like, Nathan, I want you to remember when we talked about, citadels, maybe where we go, why we have to have 60-foot catamarans, because, all of us talked offline and said, There's no places here in, I don't know, New Zealand and Auckland. Why don't we send a couple of our patriots that are orange, down there to start a mining pool? Do I believe that's going to happen? I believe it is going to happen. The key right now is to protect our state from transhumanists, from the AI world. There's things that we can do. Guns are one thing. I don't think guns are going to be as effective, but are there other weaponry that we have to do? Do we have to stay smarter, wiser than who's there? Because remember, one of the things that they're doing in the control section is the people that are protecting them, that they're getting sicker. Their defenses are also down. And that's part of the weakness of their plan. They don't see those things. And the reason why is because they're very confident they're going to win. Why? Because they've been winning for 500 years. But that doesn't mean they're still going to continue to win, because remember, the rules of engagement change. When you move the rules of engagement to different locations, different latitudes, different altitudes, different zip codes, guess what? The battle's different. The battle that Simon will fight, the battle that Nathan will fight, the battle that I will fight, I don't believe are going to be the same battle. But what's the end point? The end point is we are lock, stock, unison together, because we understand how to destroy a one world government. It is through multiple axes and control. And here's the irony, to circle back to your point. It's what the founding fathers found. Tripart government made the United States extremely stable. What are they trying to do? Get rid of tripart government, which they've been very successful at. They're going to do the same thing with Bitcoin. And that's what we're kind of laying out in this podcast. We're trying to explain to you that the covenant between Satoshi, the white paper, and all of us is also constantly under attack. And many people don't realize it, and they need to. There's so many people, at least in my country, in the United States, who are oblivious to this. I mean, I've seen Simon fight with them in rooms, and, I wanted to get on Twitter Space and say, look, stop arguing with them, because a lawyer from New York City is never going to get it, Simon. You're wasting your breath. The thing is he going to influence other people in our community? Yeah, but what does that mean? That means Nathan, I'm just going to say, Nathan's got the job to parse out, the people on the podcast to say, look, he's the Bitcoin mentor. Do we really want to listen to this guy packing our parachute, that's, storing his coins all on Coinbase? Does that make sense to us? By posing those difficult questions and listening, to different podcasts. To be honest with you, I appreciate coming on and doing this, because it's very, very clear. I'm probably more optimistic having talked to you guys, because I think we're all on the same page on this. I think the difference is that we just got to tighten up how we think about those different things, and the things that we talk about in the future. Because remember, the AI for us that's coming, these are new Bitcoiners that are not minted yet. We have to make sure they're able to buy Bitcoin. And if they can, then we have to start thinking about making sure that our peer-to-peer network abilities to share with them is intact and capable. I think the way we need to think about our nation state needs to be codified as well. If you want to know the truth, I think if we all get together and do meetings, or we do it like this, we have a roundtable and get people's best ideas. We do it like the Continental Congress did. We get in there and fight with each other and say, look, this is what I think needs to happen. Why? Because I do think we need to be more unified and more wise about how we do it. It's almost an oxymoron to say that decentralized people need to be more centralized and consensus. But the beautiful part of Satoshi's white paper is the consensus is built into the white paper. As long as we do that, we're good. We're not going to have to worry about anything that takes away, from the security of the network. We need to actively go after and support. And that's, part of the reason I say this, Nathan, is you remember last time I was on, I made a couple of controversial points about, I can like people like, Peter McCormick that took the jab. Why? He's still Team Orange, but I need Peter and his ilk, his progeny, to realize there's a battle that we're all going to fight down the road. And right now, what we're talking about, I feel like in America, this is like we're in 1760, before King George really, slammed the shit down. And, Ben Franklin and Thomas Jefferson are with the French talking to them about what the Age of Enlightenment really was, because they had to get that idea, the greatest idea the United States has ever given the world, as far as I'm concerned, is that our inalienable rights come from God, not from fucking government, not from anybody else. And, I feel the same way about Bitcoin, to be quite frank with you.
Yeah, the fact that we're having all these attack vectors is a positive thing. If we weren't important, we wouldn't have all these attacks. And the fact that we're an anti-fragile network is an important thing. Now, one of the things that I think, even Peter McCormack is a classic example. He still thinks that there's a political solution and that the government are in charge. Like, we're telling you who's in charge. You've got the tech bros, you've got the finance bros, you've got the military bros. This is the top of the structure. All our governments are owned by them. Like, you talk about this tri-government, you've
so
got,
it's the podcast, Simon. Just remember that. So it's the podcast. I mean, let's be frank with it, because when we say this, people in the audience are going to be. You have to realize part of the reason why I said I wouldn't go on Tucker Carlson and why I wouldn't go on Rogan. Palantir owns Rogan. Anybody who's looked into it knows it. So why would a Bitcoiner really want to go on Rogan's show? I'd much rather come to Nathan's show, because I think, BTC Sessions is not a douchebag. My only complaint is that I don't think he engages enough. He's too Canadian. I want him to fight more like the hockey players do. And, that's part of the reason I like you, because I like when you go after other Bitcoiners, because you know what? Nathan said this on the last podcast, steel sharpens steel. And I think that's kind of the message that I really want to get out, that I could still talk.
This is some good messaging, man. Like, have like more of a serious kind of united mission. Everybody kind of has their own, I guess you could say, ego. Everybody has their own like way they want to do things and go about. But the thing is, if they're divided, they're cooked. But if they're united, they're invincible. That's kind of the thing. Even if you go to war, just think about it. You have your squad. You can't be thinking things like, oh, we're gonna lose. Oh, there's undeniably people in our squad that are going to die. No, we will win. Like, we will absolutely dominate. And this is the kind of mentality you need. You need that. And that's kind of this, that's the skeleton key. Like, you can't, it's a either all or nothing. You gotta do what you gotta do. You gotta be a man. And I think this is pretty cool. This is very, very cool.
Kind of the message that I really want to get out, that I could still talk shit about you, but it doesn't mean I don't like you. I mean, I still respect your opinion. I look at what we're going through right now just like I look at an M&M conference. You're trying to make me a better neurosurgeon by pointing out maybe what I'm missing. And that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Facts.
And just on that, I want to close the loop on the Zach Shapiro thing. Zach Shapiro is part of the Bitcoin Policy Institute. The Bitcoin Policy Institute, he's a Zionist for a start, by ideology. I called him out on that publicly. And secondly, if you look at his team in the Bitcoin Policy Institute, it is around, you got ex-CIA people in the team, in plain sight. But also with the things that he was doing, he was bragging to me about the projects he was involved in. Apparently, he was saying that he was standing up for the Market Samurai case. And so the Market Samurai case was where he was saying, yeah, we're trying to make sure that you get self-custody. We're trying to stand against central bank digital currencies. And so you got to understand that these are within our community. these different, and they're trying to raise finance from the Bitcoin community. And that connects to the market samurai thing. Even the current debate around knots versus core. Just think about it. What is the core essence of the debate? You've got one faction of core that says we want the ability for everyone to put shit on the chain and spam on the chain. What does spam on the chain mean? It means tokenized real world assets. It means NFTs. It means shitcoins. It means stable coins. It means central bank digital currencies. And that's one side of, the debate. What does Larry Fink want to do? He wants to tokenize everything. They want stable coins. They want all these covert operations. Now, what's the other side of the debate is that they're saying, well, we want to maintain the ability to take out the spam. Now, if you're someone that's looking to control Bitcoin as much as you can, you're thinking about we control it through the spam, but also we control it from the other side. If somebody can filter out spam, then we can force them to filter out other things. And so you've got both sides of that debate. And depending on which side of the celebrity worship you're on, you're going to bow down to one of your celebrities and say, yeah, and that's why I say it is critical thinking. Remember what Bitcoin is. Bitcoin is an open source boardroom with competing different factions that is not perfectly decentralized, but the most decentralized thing we have in the world. And there is constant attacks.
The other thing I want to point out for the people in the audience who probably have gray hair like me, what Simon just said, that's the modern evolution of what's going on. But this is very similar to what we just saw happen with Ukraine and Zelensky. What's the real point there? The point is to steal money from the United States through the NGOs. Why? To make us more in debt so that we'll be more compliant for what's coming next. I would tell you the same thing is true what happened in the Samurai case or the cases with Charlie Shrem. Let's make it so we put him in house arrest, take all his money away so that he can't defend himself. That is like the most unconstitutional thing you can do. And in the Samurai case, remember, they actually hid the fact that when the DOJ went to FinCEN and asked them, is the Samurai wallet a tool of money laundering? The answer was no, and they buried that in discovery for 1 year. So that is a Brady violation. So that tells you the mindset of the people in the U.S. government. They give two fucks about the rule of law. Why? Because they know they have so many judges in place that they can still run this game.
Yeah. And the thing is, there are people that, people are kind of waking up to all of this stuff, of all the like corruption, and people are becoming judges. People are becoming like these lawyers, judges, whatever, and they're aware. Does that make sense? They're awake. They know what they're doing. They know all this stuff, or most of it. It's particularly in the politics. They know very much about politics, but I don't necessarily know about all of this. And they go into these schools, they get educated, they get these jobs, and they kind of infiltrate. But the thing is, to get like the kind of top positions, you have to do shit like Epstein Island. You have to do things like weird stuff that a Christian would never do, that a moral man would never do, a Muslim good man would never do, and this is the thing, like it's pretty disgusting how there's all these like barriers in place to oppress you. You can have money, but some tolls you can't pay with money. You got to pay it with your soul. You got to pay it with you got to do weird shit. And I wonder, like, I kind of have hope for AI in a way, although I don't know much about it. I hope that AI can be used in a kind of cool, decentralized way in that it can replace crooked, evil people. You know, if we could have like a neutral, normal AI that could have neutral, normal answers in line with natural law and kind of reality. You know, something that is better than evil, corrupt, you know, flesh human monsters. You know, these people are not like, there's a lot of them that they're not really human in a way. They're like monsters. And yeah, I hope something like that can happen, like a AI. You know, you use AI against AI in a weird way, but you got to make a good one. You know, not something that will try to mess with people, but help them. Isn't that, I don't even know. Like, what was the point? What was the purpose of AI? You know, I guess for them it's to increase productivity and money and control and blah blah blah. But I think it would be nice to have something that is purely there to serve and help, and not take away life. You know, not take away responsibility, because that is responsibility and kind of agency. That is what gives you purpose. You know, you have something, and it's kind of evil to have AI take everything away from you. That's kind of what happened with even modern technologies. You know, it took purpose away from people. The dishwasher took away purpose. You know, the washing machine took away purpose. Like, people became, especially the women, they became more miserable. You know, and there's like certain things I've looked at. That's what I'm talking about. So yeah. Anyway,
It's they give two fucks about the rule of law. Why? Because they know they have so many judges in place that they can still run this game. It's the ultimate wrench attack. And what's happening to us through history? Money has been coming out. What is inflation? It's the same thing that's going on with Zelensky. What, you really want to take it so people wake up? This is exactly what China and Japan have been doing in North Korea. You want to know where all the uranium and rare earth metals are coming from? They're coming from the people who are shitcoiners that had control in China. That's why that market's broken. And remember, that market is going to be really important to the people like Karp and Palantir. But are Bitcoiners paying attention to that? Do Bitcoiners understand what David Sachs is really doing? Like, the next iteration of this multipolar world that Simon is talking about is going to be based in stable coins. If you want to know what Lutnick's whole game is, that's it. He went from the primary broker dealer for treasuries. Now he wants to run the show in stable coins. That's the game that's being played.
It's very interesting. Yeah. I wanted to kind of tease two things out there. One, I had this thought while you were talking that with regards to the multipolar world, is the distribution of hash kind of giving you a little bit of a hint of who's going to be the big players in the multipolar world? Okay, perfect. And then additionally, Simon, I'll start with you. I feel like things are going to escalate. And again, you can always see like doom's kind of on the horizon, but I do think that particularly with the samurai case that we're going to see at least, and Dr. Kruse, to your point from last time, the kumbaya moment for Bitcoiners in the US might be coming to a bit of an end here. I have a sneaking suspicion that it kind of is going to coincide with the end of the debt cycle. I'm wondering, one, if you see escalation on the horizon in terms of regulatory outright attack on Bitcoiners, and then two, where you think we are in the debt cycle at the moment.
Yeah, well, the good thing about Bitcoin is that the elites and wealthy want Bitcoin for themselves as well. So they try and create a two-tiered structure, just like AML and KYC, right? You don't want anyone doing money laundering, and so you create all these honeypots through regulated institutions. But in the meantime, Jeffrey Epstein is banking through JP Morgan or BCCI or the Vatican Bank and those networks. So it's about creating a monopoly. But it's a bit like, the islands of the British, colonies. They still want
Isle of Man,
safe places.
Guernsey, Jersey, exactly. All of them. Right. That's where
they still want safe places
everything
for
from
the
London
elites.
Yeah, I totally agree. I hope people really understand that point you're making, because we're seeing it in those banks. Like, you go to Jersey, you go to Guernsey, you see the Isle of Man, what's going on. You can even look at Barbados, Bermuda, like all the tax shelter havens. The same shit's going to go on in the crypto shitcoin world that Lutnick's trying to build.
Yeah. So, that's the thing. The elites still want Bitcoin. They don't want to kill the golden goose, but they just want different rules for everybody else. They want to self-custody, but they don't want you to self-custody. And so they're launching these idols for you to worship and creating tax incentives, like, and all these different types of loopholes for you to put your money with them. I want to leave people with different acts. And you talked about the AI side as well. Look, the reality is that nothing stops this trade. Like, I mean, the trillions that are being invested into taking us down this world is something that we can't stop. But what can we do? What can we learn from? But if you want to boycott the Federal Reserve and the Bank for International Settlements, then you own Bitcoin. If you want to boycott BlackRock ETFs, you own it in self-custody. If you want to boycott the banks, then you don't borrow against your Bitcoin and you stop mining fiat currency by putting it with a custodian and borrowing against it. If you want to boycott this artificial intelligence, then run your own LLMs on your own local environments, because you're not going to compete by staying outside the system. We're moving to this AI world. Nothing stops that train. But what can you do? You can run your own LLMs. If you want to boycott the globalists, the Zionists, whatever your different iteration, the Fabians, we all have different, where the source are. Then you spend local. You move to places which are rural. You build your own communities. Like, people are funding to get. You don't borrow from the bank. You get 30 people together that are rich Bitcoiners, and you put some in, and you build your own community, and you shop from farmers, and you support local. Like, this is where we chip. Our vote is not voting for a politician and expecting Trump or Mondani or whoever the next person is. It's us looking after ourselves, building our own community, spending local, not borrowing. You got to boycott the systems, and that's what we need to do. And so our own LLMs, our own investments in decentralized technology, our own self-custody. And here's the thing: they ain't going to take it away. They're only going to allow the elites to have it. So you got to stack your Bitcoin and become one of those elites, because there's only ever going to be 21 million, and you become one of those elites, and then that's how we influence the system. And that's the resistance that we need to understand. And we need to look at every attack vector that's happening in Bitcoin and understand that these idol worship, we don't worship the idols. We don't trust, we verify, we fight it out. It's an open source boardroom. You can accuse everything you want. If you want to create a conspiracy theory about Simon Dixon, you can look at all the different companies I invested in. You can look at all the shit things that I did. I invested in Celsius. That was a Zionist operation. But I'm open source, sharing my experience. And you don't trust me. You recognize that I could be compromised, because we all can be. And we make sure that we get the best outcome by making sure that all these different parts of the ecosystem are as decentralized. There is never going to be anything more decentralized than what we have here. So just because we're pointing out the attack vectors, we're pointing these out because I'm not going to do what Michael Saylor does. I'm not going to say we got the perfect Bitcoin and everyone should custody it and everyone should borrow against it and you should buy my stock and we should borrow as much fiat currency so that JP Morgan has complete leverage over me. I'm not going to say that. We've got to get closer and closer to the way that Bitcoin was designed, which is money you can own, money that has a fixed supply, money you can spend, and constant attack vectors to try and change those core things. We have nodes, we have miners, we have users, we have companies that try and centralize it. And we just need to make sure that we're vigilant and we're talking about the real shit and we're pointing out the compromise and attack vectors that people are worshiping and falling for head over fist right now. And it has to be global. We can't centralize this all into one honeypot ecosystem. This has to be, in a multipolar world, you have countries that hate each other mining Bitcoin so that when one goes out of control, the one that hates each other sees an opportunity.
Amazing. Dr. Kruse, anything you want to add to that list?
No, I was going to say, now that we've laid the podcast out, you probably can't market the end of this because we really agree. I mean, if you really think about it, I don't think there's a big disagreement. I mean, the same thing is true when, the communities that I'm building, I'm way ahead of that game. I've been doing that for 20 years. Do I think you have to hold passports from people that hate each other? Yes. Turkey and Iranian passports are really good. Do you want to drive a Mercedes-Benz or, a Lamborghini? No, because they send all the information back to Peter Thiel to put in the algorithm. So maybe you go buy a Changan or a GWM car. I don't give two fucks if Mao has my information. But that's the kind of thing that
we use. Yeah, okay. So in a multipolar world, you use China shit in the US because that shit doesn't matter. Like, what are they gonna do? Yeah, okay.
We need to start to talk about on podcasts instead of talking about, I don't know, the next great wallet, or, hey, are you involved with MSTY? What's your point there? I just think that the future is bright. I don't want anybody to leave here and think that it's not, because it is. I am very bullish about humanity, the human blockchain, and I'm extremely, extremely bullish that human blockchain is powered by Bitcoin. That's the key.
Yeah, it's beautiful. The last thing I just want to ask you, Dr. Kruse, but in time I'll let you jump back in as well too, is that you spoke about we need the savages to coordinate. We need the somewhat centralization of our decentralized data. Do you have any thoughts on strategies or tactics for Bitcoiners to coordinate to deal with this situation?
Yeah, I do. I probably don't want to out it right here, but I would say you've started it today with me and Simon. I also would say, like, when Max and Stacy have a golf tournament, if Simon doesn't play golf, he should still come, because it's the things that we're going to talk about there that are going to be interesting. Do I think signing up for a ticket to go, I don't know, to Bitcoin Las Vegas makes sense? No, I don't think it makes sense at all. Why would you want to have a meeting in a place where, they try to kill MBS, and gave you a bullshit PSYOP story there? We have to be smarter about this shit. And do I think there's going to be opportunities for us to meet? I told you, Nathan, and I'm telling you again, maybe we can let Simon in on the game. I think maybe we need to buy a lot of 60-foot catamarans and meet each other in the ocean, outside of Madagascar. Maybe let's go see what Antarctic is and what they're doing down in the holes in the ground there. We need to get out and see the world.
We need to go into Argartha and get them out so they can help us. We need to get the people who have the invite in Argartha to go in. Like that whole thing. I don't even know much about it. It's like a massive meme. But he says there's holes. That sounds interesting. What are they building there?
Outside of Madagascar. Maybe let's go see what Antarctic is and what they're doing down in the holes in the ground there. We need to get out and see the world and build the world that we want. I mean, we all know that the world is fucked up in very many ways, but we have the ability to change what they're doing. We absolutely do. If you didn't get anything from this podcast, please at least get that. And we all have special abilities. We all know history in different ways, in different epochs, and how they fit together. You need to understand the evolution and what's coming, because guess what? When you think we're done, then we need to do this when I'm probably on my deathbed. You got gray hair and Simon has gray hair, because we're going to have a new generation of Bitcoiners that we have to teach how they try to screw us in the 1990s, 2000s, 2010s, and 2020s. We need to tell them the story about what happened with the treasury companies, what happened with Lutnick, what happened with Trump, and we have to be honest about it. I think that's really the benefit. And I applaud you and Ben for putting this together on short notice and doing this, because it sounds like it's the audience that asked for this. I don't know how happy the audience is going to be when they find out that Jack, Nathan, and Simon really aren't that far off in where we're thinking about things. I think it's a good thing, and just know that I think our union is strong. I really believe that. The Bitcoin union is strong because we're savages.
Agreed. Simon?
Yeah, I want to add to that as well. Look, the very fact that people were excited about us doing a Jerry Springer show and you getting some entertainment is a problem in itself. Because we're here, I'm a serious guy, and Bitcoin's a serious topic. We can have fun. I'm not saying that, but this is a serious topic. You know, we're talking about something that is probably the last hope that we have in terms of a technology that can resist against this. So you got to understand, you just got to be smarter. Now, we have an open source boardroom where we call everything out. But if you find yourself tuning in for entertainment for a Jerry Springer show, then you're not utilizing your time correctly. You know, because you are in an algorithm and they're going to scroll you and they're going to make you hate people. They're going to hate Muslims. They're going to make you hate the Democrats, the crazy radical lefts, the Republicans, the women. They're doing things. Your algorithm is trying to make you dumb, stupid, hateful, have your mind where you're eating all the wrong shit, injecting yourself with vaccines, like doing all the shit that's going to make you weak. They want you, they want you a vegetable, essentially. Why? They don't want you having children. They're flooding us. The Zionists are flooding us with a live, real-time genocide while they're blowing up children in real time, backed up by a network that is trafficking our children through pedophilia rings. So what I'm saying is, if we have one thing on this earth that we are meant to do, and I don't know your spiritual belief, because I do believe there is a greater plan, and evil has an elastic band. When it gets too damn evil, it flicks right back. But if we have one thing that we're meant to be doing, we're meant to have our children, we're meant to look after our children, we're meant to be looking after our body, we're meant to be staying mentally strong, and everything they need for you to win is weak, with no children, and that you're having sex with some kind of bot that Elon Musk is creating, addicted to pornography, while you're injected with a vaccine, eating some kind of weird type of food that's giving you cancer so that they can fix their pension crisis.
So just so you know, I didn't pay Simon to say any of that. Okay. Simon, that's been my message for 20 years. You basically described MK Ultra, the Brain Health Initiative, and the Stanford Research Institute. That whole program is the reason why Peter Thiel and the transhumanists are in power. And all the algorithms, that's the reason why Google was built. All of this is part of that story. And I can't disagree with anything you said. I just thought it was funny hearing it come out of you, because it usually comes out of me.
That's absolutely beautiful. I love it. So stack sats, see the sun. You need 7 daughters and 7 sons. That's exactly the mission that we got to go on. And we're going to jump on some boats and maybe have some conversations in the future. Gentlemen, this has been fantastic. I would really love to do it again, maybe like next year in a couple months or something, particularly if there's any big events that we can give an update on kind of where the existing system is currently pushing us and what people in Bitcoiners need to be on the lookout for. So with that, Simon, please tell me everywhere everybody can go check out your stuff.
Yeah, I go live once a week as a discipline, and I cover this week in tech and Bitcoin, this week in macro, and this week in geopolitics.
Brother, this was some beautiful stuff. Man, there was so much. Yeah, I mean, damn, my mind is blown. Oof. Anyway, what do you boys think about this? This is some crazy stuff. Man, shout out Simon Dixon. This was something. Yeah. Anyway, boys, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I catch you boys on the next one. Take care of yourself.